What happens when magical typewriters and enemies to lovers tension and literal guard wall all collide into a single YA novel? Rebecca Ross's Divine Rivals had me surprised in more ways than I expected. And today we're going deep, and I mean deep, into this story. If you're new here, hi, I'm Liz and I read mostly fantasy. I've got a thing with contemporary romance at the moment, and in general just books that last long after the last page. And if you also find yourself sopping in the garden while listening to audiobooks like a normal person, then maybe hit that subscribe button. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I went into Divine Rivals with absolutely zero expectations and also full of expectations all at once, because I'd seen it floating around booktube since last year or something like that, and I'd seen the beautiful cover and everyone seemed to be absolutely having a moment over it. But you know that feeling where a book is so hyped up and everyone is just loving it that you're like, is it actually good or is it just the hype? Spoiler, it's definitely not just the hype. And this book actually converted me into becoming an audiobook gal. Like, I've never loved audiobooks at all. I've almost hated them, unless it was non-fiction or something. I'll be able to listen to that. Anything fiction, I haven't been able to listen to it. And I remember doing a video last year, it was like, how on earth are you guys listening to audiobooks? I just don't know. I couldn't do chores, I couldn't be driving, but I guess I just hadn't found the book. And now I found the book. And now I love audiobooks. I love listening as everyone else while I'm doing my chores or I'm in the garden. I'm not really sure what it was that converted me, but there was something about the narration that just worked for me. But let me be clear, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to listen to epic fantasy audiobooks at all. My brain is too visceral. Visceral? Visual. Two different words. Because if I try to listen to something like Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas, I'm gonna be seeing the protagonist as blood rain is pouring down on her while she's trying to save the love of her life. And I'm gonna be a danger to myself and everyone else. So I'm just gonna be sticking to more light-hearted, not as gripping novels while listening to audiobooks. Otherwise I won't get anything done or I'm gonna endanger everyone else. And we can't have that. Back to the review. So here's what you need to know about Divine Rivals. It is set in a world where two gods are at war with each other, and that war is spilling into the lives of everyday people, as war tend to do. But this is not some sprawling high stakes epic with 12 point views. It is much more intimate. We follow Iris Winnow, a young, aspiring journalist who is just trying to find her place in the world, and Roman Kid, the brooding rival at her workplace. And yes, his name is Roman Kid. And no, I'm not over it. There is magic in this story. There is magical typewriters that send letters across dimensions, literal gods influencing the world, some sort of dragons that I won't be trying to pronunciate at this moment. But the heart of the story is two broken people who are writing each other in secret, pouring their hearts out with the deepest fears and maybe finding something good in each other. It's about grief and longing and finding home in someone else. And I think that is so freaking beautiful. I feel like the fantasy element in the first book anyway, because I forgot to mention that it's a duology. And this is the first book of the duology. And I feel like the fantasy elements in this first novel are more like backdrops to the real story, which is a lot more about connection and grief and love blooming under pressure. It is so beautifully written in this achingly poetic way. And I found myself way more invested in the emotional arcs of the story than the war plotline. And what really hit me emotionally was the idea of writing letters into the void, hoping someone is on the other side. Iris has this typewriter at home. She doesn't know to begin with that it is magical. And she writes letters to her brother and just, a diary sort of way. And her brother is in the war. He left the family to go participate in this war. And she hasn't heard from him for quite a while. They were very, very strongly connected. So she misses him tremendously. And she is just writing heart-achingly letters out into the void, and I can just relate to that as someone who writes poetry myself. I don't have a magic typewriter that I know of anyway. But as someone who writes my own poems and songs, and just having that outlet is incredibly releasing, incredibly nurturing, but it's also very lonely because it's just you. And I just felt that loneliness whenever she sat down to write on her typewriter, having so much in your heart and just wanting to connect to someone, but only being brave enough to put it down to paper and not with a real person in front of you. That feeling of isolation and not really knowing if your words actually matter to anyone but yourself. I feel like a lot of us can relate to that, whether we are being creative with our words in any way. I think that's quite universal, and it just hit me so deeply. And I really love that aspect of the story. Another part that I really enjoyed about this book is the enemies to lovers trope.
It's not really enemies to lovers, it's more like rivals to lovers. It's not, they're not that extreme.
And I'm such a sucker for that trope. I can't help it. I want the banter. I want all of the misunderstandings. I want it that, eventually will turn into, oh no, I'm in love with you. And there's also this sort of secret identity with these anonymous letters, because the letters that Roman and Iris are writing to each other are anonymous to begin with, and he is afraid to come forward with who he actually is. So he does a not cool thing and lies about who he is, and she actually falls a little bit in love with it. So we've got this weird love triangle. It's not really a love triangle at all, and it feels a little bit like You've Got Mail, but set in a fantasy world with guards and magical typewriters. And it's just so beautiful to see how these letters that they send to each other become this lifeline, how it becomes like a tether. It absolutely worked for me. I'm always curious as to how the first novel of a series, whether it's a duology or a longer series, how they continue the story, how they are gonna make the cliffhanger work for the next story, I just love this. I love the ending of this.
And I loved it.
The reveal at the end. So at the end, we have this, as we must have in a fantasy, this big fight at the end where the war has finally caught up to where Roman and Iris are, and they want to stay in the city even though everyone's being advised to evacuate, to go to safety. They decide to stay to help out, and obviously they can't really help that much out. They're not trained fighters at all, and they decide now it's time to leave, to go for safety. And we are led to believe that it is Iris and Roman that are trying to escape the war front, but while trying to get to safety, Roman and Iris are separated, and we think that Roman is the one who is coming back for Iris and help them both escape the war front. But then we realize that was not the case. It is not them, it's actually her brother. And Roman is now in the hands of one of the guards, and it's not the one that we're rooting for. It is such a good twist. And I think it's a good twist because we've been hearing so much about this brother, but nothing has really happened. She's been trying to find her brother throughout this story. I feel like I should have told you so much about what the story is actually about. I hope that you can keep up. This is a bit of a mess. Anyways, it is such a good twist, and not just because of the misdirection, but because it raises the stakes so much for the next book. I'm just left longing for what happens, what is going to happen next. I need more guards, more of the mythology, and absolutely more magical typewriters for sure. So here's the thing, I rated this book 3 stars on Goodreads, and I don't think it would ever be a 4-star for me, but maybe 3.5 if I had read it physically. And I think it's just because it is a YA novel. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a YA novel at all. And it's not like young adult. But I just felt sometimes that the pacing dragged a little bit. And even though I love the intimacy of this story, I did have moments where I felt like the world building could have been expanded just a little bit. But maybe that's just me being eager, wanting to know more about the gods, more about the mythology, more about the magic and the typewriters. And that is why I need to read the second book. But despite that, because those are minor things, and despite of those minor things, this book just really stayed with me. I'm still thinking about it, and it's been almost a month since I listened to it, and that is why I feel like this book is stronger emotionally than its plot or world mechanics. And sometimes that is a bad thing. Sometimes we need more plot and less emotional. The emotional development can feel like it's been dragged out, but it was so not the case with this book, because it didn't need to be an epic. It needed to be exactly what it was, a love story set in an absolute broken world. Would I recommend this book? Yes, absolutely. Especially if you like quiet fantasy and emotional core and a love story that builds through words and shared grief. I can't wait to read Ruthless Vows. Oh my gosh, that was difficult for me to say. Ruthless Vows. And I actually think that I'm going to be listening to it as well. I really hope it's the same narrators as the first one, because that just worked for me. I want to listen to it while weeding out the garden and crying into my soil. And I have this feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of the divine politics that I'm craving. More intensity and probably more heartbreak as well. But honestly, I'm here for it. I'm here for heartbreak. If you've read Divine Rivals, I would love to hear your thoughts about it. Were you emotionally wrecked as I was? Or did you find it overhyped? Drop a comment below and let's cry about it together. Maybe that's a bit too dramatic, but I'm excited about this book. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, consider subscribing to my channel. It helps me out so freaking much. And I do long form reviews, reading vlogs, and more rants than I can count every single week. Stay messy, stay magical, and keep on reading.